Alrighty, so good morning all and welcome back to the porch. It's nice to see you, David, bright and cheery. And what do we have today?
Oh man, all kind of good stuff. Best thing we got going is our guest, Mr. Marin Harrell.
Messy Marv.
Welcome, Marvin.
Right on.
All right. Thank you.
And I'm going to say this real quick, and then I'm going to give it over to you, Marvin, and you tell us about yourself, what you do, and your thoughts. Just real quickly, I want to take a moment for the porch to acknowledge what's happening to our country in Florida. And for those people down there, this is not about politics. I don't care if you're a Democrat, Republican. It's not about religion. I don't care what you believe in or believe nothing in. It matters not. This is about our fellow countrymen, Americans, who are suffering horrendously and will continue to suffer for a long period of time. So if there's anything anybody out there can do or finds it in their way to do something, please do it, whatever it is. Help out any way you can, you see fit. But let's all keep in mind, this is not a political thing. This is strictly an act of nature. And unfortunately, these people are suffering the brunt end of it. That being said, on a happier note, Mr. Marin Harrell, please tell us about yourself, my brother.
Well, not much to tell. If I do, I do hate this. I'm going to kind of to what you just said. You said it's not political, but I kind of wish the hurricane would kind of take a detour to Mar-a-Lago. I don't know, but anyway, and I'm a lifelong friend of Dave Espinosa here. I say, but I've lived all over the country. I've experienced pretty much everything politically that you could imagine that pretty much anybody would experience. And I'm just happy to be here today and see what's happening. You know, it's interesting that you guys call yourself, the show is Porch Talk. My dad, he lived in a cul-de-sac where he lived. So everyone who lived in his neighborhood had to pass by his house. And my dad waved at everybody that went by. He sat on his porch and he waved at it. Even like 2 or 3 years after he died, people would drive by the house and just wave at the empty porch because
That's beautiful.
But it's interesting. You guys got Porch Talk. I used to go sit on the porch and chat with my dad all the time.
On that note about your dad, something I do know, his dad was a military service member, as Marvin was as well, served in the Navy. So this guy has much broader experience than he's letting up, folks. And I think it's important to understand that when he talks about being involved in many different things, one of the things Marvin's been known for ever since I can remember in high school, Marvin has always been a political activist on the side of the working class individual, people's rights, women's rights, equality across the board, period. And on top of that, he was an inspector for the city and county of San Francisco, for the housing authority, an inspector. He's got a lot of experience working with a lot of different types of people. So his knowledge is much broader than he lets on. So I want to get back to him and let him tell us a little bit about what he feels. And I'd like to just ask you a broad question.
Go ahead.
Remember, at the beginning, we said that's not political, but the rest of this is straight out.
I was making a joke.
I love your joke. It was perfect. It was a perfect segue. Hey, so tell me, Marvin, how do you see? You have a very broad perspective based on all your experiences and your travels. And as an African American, a person who's lived in all kinds of different areas and grew up with a lot of different people, races, that's how we met, you and I.
Right.
What do you think is the take from a Black perspective, from the male perspective on this whole political thing? What's their interest? How do you think they move, they vote?
Well, I've given it a lot of thought, and I've come to the two conclusions, right? The greedy and the dumb are are Trump supporters. That's it. I don't think there's no middle ground. They're either dumb or greedy. And I mean, you could have a PhD and still be dumb. If you're, I don't understand people who are supporting against their own self-interest. When just I haven't read this Project 2025, but it's from the excerpts that I have heard, it sounds pretty heinous. And the people, the rounding up illegal immigrants, that's like they did with the whole zoot suit thing back in the 30s. Their whole mentality is to take things back in time, and we don't need to go back. Like I hate to sound like I'm piggybacking off Kamala, but we need to go forward. I mean, we need to think ahead, and there's not a I, I I don't hate people just because they exist. I don't dislike somebody just because they're here. We have failed a failed system, but those people that come here for asylum, they're not the ones who created the system as it is. So to vilify them is to me wrong. To vote against your own interest, wrong. I don't understand the mentality of the populace right now, because everybody is thinking so selfishly, in my opinion. That's on the right. The people on the left, from what I see, are more broad-minded. We tend to think about the big picture, not just the small groups. We think about everyone that constitutes the entire group. We think about each other, and so that's what I want to continue to do. I try to get people to do that, but they have their own self-interest. And I'll give you an example. A guy that you and I grew up with. We went to high school with him and all his brothers. So now, okay, so he and his wife's mom was a major East San Jose political activist. But see, and over the years, they've acquired some wealth. So they're worth about $5-6 million now. So I had lunch with them the day after the debate with Trump and Kamala, and I asked them what they think about it. The guy, who we know, he got quiet. That in itself is a major indicator of somebody who has flipped the script. Because normally back in the day when he was still liberal, he would have just chimed in, yeah, that MF did that, and da, 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 da. But now he got quiet. His wife, whose mom was a political activist on the East Side, goes, I don't know, Marvin. Neither one of them impresses me. And that blew me away. That blew me away that they're hedging now. They are on the fence. And you know why? They're in a tax bracket. They're the greedy. They're not the dumb. Well, they're dumb now, but they're greedy. And how much do you need? How much does a person need to live? So it just bugs me. It bugs me, and we've changed. Money changes people.
Well, he said something interesting that I'd like to just talk about for a moment. And you talked about people not having a broader sense of their own existence, their community, a global perspective, a national perspective, even a regional or a local perspective. They lack all of that.
Yeah.
It seems to be an I, me perspective all the time. So when we look at political reasoning and why people may feel one way as opposed to another way, oftentimes the conflict comes from a lack of understanding what a democracy is. A democracy is, by its own nature, based on the whole. Majority rules, period, based on the whole. Whatever is good for the whole. And the rest of them have to suck it up.
A true democracy.
A true democracy. That's what I'm talking about always. Well, remember, the striving idealistically is always for that.
Right.
Now, we've got a lot of bumps and roads and, bridges and burnt out bridges, and you get the idea. But yeah, that's the goal, always reaching towards that. And you said something else that was so important, I think. The difference between Kamala and Trump is Kamala has substance, period. When she speaks, she's always speaking of a plan and how the plan will work. Not just, they did this. Trump is always accusatory and condemnation. That's his whole gig.
Well, no, man, you see, you're not giving him credit because he has concepts of a plan.
You're right. And I stand corrected.
I was just fact checking you.
Let's keep it fair and honest.
Right on.
That's so true. That's so true. I mean, that just blows
That
my
was
mind.
good. That was good.
And look at what all this scandal coming out. And I got to say something about the media. Craig and I had talked about this. And I want your impressions about this, Marvin. It seems like the media, not necessarily always looking for the truth or the exact facts, seem to sway one way or another depending upon who likes them and who doesn't like them.
Yeah.
And you would think that Trump, being the media savvy guy that he claims to be, would have recognized that a long time ago. Instead of calling them all kind of names and downgrade, making fun of them and saying they're fixed and biased, when the only one that's ever been fixed or biased, really, and in court confessed to such under oath that they are not a news agency but strictly entertainment, was Fox News, the one that he depends on.
Well,
So, what do you think about that?
well, I mean, think about it. Okay, every single one of them, ABC, NBC, all of them are owned by Republicans. All of them, they're all owned by Republicans. So that in itself is not a good thing. There was a time before Ronald Reagan, when he did that. And remember when you couldn't own more than one media? You couldn't own a radio station, a TV station, and all that in one area. You have your stuff spread out. Ronald Reagan deregulated that, and that's when the news started getting worse and worse. Right. And I remember I got interviewed back in about 1984 by the Mercury News. And I thought, I had read, I read the paper every day, and the local section. It was about some political stuff, some union organizing we were doing. And the person, the reporter, she misquoted me. She wrote down, she changed something I said, and that taught me right then that not to trust what the media says, and I haven't trusted them since. And it was just a mere sentence, but the way she changed the words, it changed what I meant. You could just change a couple words in a sentence.
Absolutely, take it out of context.
And that's what she did. And from that moment on, I haven't trusted the media, and it's the only ones I kind of trust are the ones that are not mainstream. And I trust Al Jazeera more than I trust CNN.
The only ones that I think, and I think I can speak for Craig on this, the only ones that Craig and I don't trust are the ones that talk bad about our films.
Hey, well, we all have our reasons.
Barbara, let me ask you a question. I read a lot and hear a lot about young Black guys voting for Trump. That just blows my mind.
Oh,
I can't.
Brother. That is, man, I just got into it. I was telling Dave this morning, there's a young man, well, he's not young, he's in his 50s, but he's young to me, that I met, that I used to work with. He was a plumber. Mm-hmm. I always consider him a fairly bright guy. And we got into a conversation a couple of weeks ago about the politics. And he's a Trump guy. But his brightness went out the window when he made a statement, because we're having this back and forth. And he goes, well, all I can tell you, Marvin, is if you vote for Kamala, that means you want a woman telling you what to do. So his brightness went out the window. He got on the ignorant panel and he stayed there. Because when you make a statement like that, it shows your level of ignorance is very high.
And his respect for his own mother.
His own,
Right on.
you know, he's no, and see, he was over here. He's over here espousing these right wing talking points. Well, I don't want my dog. He sits around, smokes pot, and plays video games.
But what drives that? What drives that mentality of these young black men, these black businessmen, etc.?
It's money. The guy, okay, like the plumber dude. He makes upward of 200 grand a year, 200 something a year doing plumbing work. It's the people that I know that are for Trump. It's because they got money or they want money. There's I was watching.
Is there a mindset you think that once they cross over a certain threshold of money, all of a sudden they change political parties, religions? Yeah. They straighten their hair out and dye
it. Well, you know, but check it out. You have the two ends of the spectrum. You have the folks with extra money, and you have the ones with none. And I was watching this video that was recorded at Hunters Point, where I used to manage in San Francisco, the Hunters Point projects, and they were interviewing these guys. And one of them gets up and he's speaking for the crowd because everyone's, you know, clapping for him. He said, "We're voting for Trump because the last time he was in office, he made it rain." And what he meant by was, well, I guess there were some stimulus checks that went out.
Right, the stimulus money.
Yeah. So that's what Biden ain't made it rain.
That wasn't him. That was a congressional act.
But they think that Trump did it. A lot of them probably think it came out of his wallet. You know what I mean? It's like that's where their mentality is. It's money or dumb. That's it to me. I don't give them any middle ground. I'm sorry. Because
I think you're very, very poetic, very well stated.
But you know, I mean, I've talked to a lot of my brothers now. There's a lot of us though that are not that mindset. I think most of us are not of that mindset. Yeah. You know, most people get their own. Most people go work. They're not waiting for a handout. These are folks that are living in the projects. They're waiting for a handout. So I don't think that they're
the rule, but they're the exception.
They're the exception. But in certain places, they're saying that he may get a lot of the black vote this time.
So Marvin, I'm sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that's scary.
So as a white guy, when I look at this, you blew my mind by what you're saying, but it makes perfect sense. When I look at this, I see Trump as a racist, misogynist, sexist, a bigot. I don't see any good moral fabric there. Okay, so any person of color, it like blows my mind. Like, how can they wear a red cap? And I see them on TikTok and whatnot doing these lives, and like they're supporting Trump, but specifically in this case for young black men. And I'm thinking with the history of just white folks and Trump and what he did in New York and whatnot, how can they support this guy? And you say, well, Craig, shove that all aside. It comes down to money. I mean, that's kind of what I take from this. Like, I just can't. It's hard for me to wrap my brain around that, man.
Well, think about it, bro. They just had people come out and admit that, okay, they were white folks, but they were wearing shirts at one of his rallies that said auto workers for Trump. But they came out and admitted that Trump gave this particular company $20,000 for the people to wear the shirts and for him to do a photo op at their company. I believe that when you see these Trump rallies and you see black people behind him, they've been paid. I don't believe that they're voluntary, because you look around, you see most of his rallies, there ain't no black folks up there. Yeah. There's no black folks behind him, but he goes to these areas where there is a lot of black folks, and they probably go to certain areas. Hey, look, you guys want to make $100? You just got to sit around for a few hours, and boom, pay them. I don't believe that all them folks are there because they support Trump. I believe a lot of them, it's just a job for the day.
Yeah.
That's a very good observation. I hadn't even considered that, but I think that's so true, because we know how much he lies.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, good God, have you? He lies so much that he will never ever take a stand. Take
dude,
No.
never.
look at the back panel. Look at the people in the backdrop behind Kamala. Look behind what you call the other guy, the
Trump.
Walls.
boss. You look at the folks behind them. They're normal, run of the mill looking. You look at whenever Trump has people like he'll say Latinos for Trump or blacks for
Yeah.
Trump, they all look like they were probably somewhere near Skid Row before the rally. They get brand new T-shirts. I'm serious. They get brand new T-shirts and they dress them up, and they're just window dressing. That's all they are.
Yeah.
I don't see anyone in their right mind. I mean, there's like I said, there's probably a 1%, 2% of people, my people, supporting Trump now. What's blowing my mind though is a lot of the Latinos though that I know.
Incredible amount.
Yes,
Yeah, it's kind of sad too. Throughout Texas and the Southwest, okay, Arizona, give me a break. We lost your hearing.
what do you take for that from that?
I think again, it all comes down to what you've already outlined very adequately. Agreed. It comes down to their pocket, their thing. And that's the difference between understanding democracy and having different perspectives, global, national, regional, etc., which they lack. You called it straight up stupid. Not because and I know you don't mean that in a sense that these people are not intelligent,
They've been
don't have education, don't have understanding, because they all do. It's that they choose this over that. And interestingly enough, in making choices like that, they're short term choices. They're not thinking about their grandchildren. They're in down the line, 2, 3, 4 generations. They're not playing chess at all. What's going to be inevitably the best thing for this? They have such a limited understanding of their own world. It's cloistered. And you're talking to a guy who's been basically cloistered in my home here for the past couple of years because of some other situations. No, I do not wear an ankle bracelet. Okay.
What, hey, let me ask you a question.
Sure.
Do you believe, because this is the thought that I have, that a lot of the Latinos that are Trumpsters are like second and third generation, and they feel that they've arrived and that they're no longer have any connection to the Mexicans or the Latinos coming across the border, and they're just as angry as the Anglos about these people, but also they're condemning their own folks. Do you feel like that's a possibility that they don't?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. There's class racism within each culture. Come on. I mean,
Yeah,
look what in India. Not to put them down, their caste system is not for me. Period. But you're born into that crap, and God help you trying to get out of it. And they bring that over here, and that's still happening right here in this country. The same thing. And yes, you're absolutely right. The people who have been here second and third generation look at the braceros, look at the mojados, and that's what they call them, wetbacks, and just a bunch of workers and shit. And they think of them in derogatory terms. I'm better than. Now, I
right.
was born here. My parents were born here. My grandmother was born here, but my grandfather crossed. Okay, I get that, but doesn't matter. Point being, this class distinction within races is the same thing. I'm better than. You're not as good as.
Hmm.
I was put down because I didn't speak Spanish fluently when I came to San Jose at the age of 12. Okay. I wasn't raised there. I was raised in Denver in the projects, man, with black kids and poor white kids. And our parents didn't in Denver at that time, you spoke Spanish in school, they kicked you out. So my parents didn't teach us Spanish. We all spoke English, but I was still recognized as a Mexican till I came to California. What sounds like, now I'm looked at, hey, what is he? I'm looked at differently. I tried to fit in. I tried to blend in and become that. So yeah, absolutely. I think you're dead on, Marvin. I think that wannabe, and we can choose all kinds of terms. Oreos, we can go. Growing up, we called people who wannabes all kinds of different names. Trying to act like you're white, but what is that? That's really, I think you nailed it. It's really a class distinction based on economics.
And
You
they,
got a couple of bucks and you think you're better than somebody else.
yeah, they forgot where they came from.
I
They're
forgot where they came from. Right.
they have short what memory lapse, and it's
Exactly.
you know we it's what blows my mind is too that you, Craig, myself, we could sit here right now and just we can agree, and I'm sure we will, that all that has to happen is all the races need to come together.
Yeah.
We all sit here and agree on that, right?
Yeah.
Just think how many people
Absolutely.
don't fucking agree with that. Excuse my
They're
language.
stupid.
Just think how many people don't feel that way.
And see,
Right.
that's because they bring their cultural racism to this country, or they maintain it when they're in this country. Little Mexico, okay? Little Saigon, little India, little Japan, Chinatown. And they stay cloistered like that, and they don't want to assimilate to the national culture. Now, a lot of people look at that word assimilation. Oh, you're trying to brainwash me. You're trying to take away my culture. But no, man, speak your language. Dress the way you want to dress. But hey, work with other people in this nation of diversity that you live in.
Well, see,
Start to understand who's your neighbor.
well,
What,
see, people, well, I think it requires more than that. I think it will require people to actually gain some sort of empathy, and also understand that we're all in the same boat. And see, a lot
absolutely.
don't think that way. A lot
Yeah.
of people think that because they feel that the news has reported that black people collect more welfare than anyone else. So
Yeah.
Not true.
they feel like we're getting more than they do. So they're being left out because we're getting all this extra welfare, whatever.
Yeah.
So they report it to make it seem like one group is doing better. They did that with the Asians. They're doing it with everyone. And what they do is they report these different changes in each ethnicity to keep us fighting over the little tiny crumbs.
Yeah.
And
I totally agree.
and the people in my community, my people that can't see that, it just blows my mind how people can't see it.
Well, to that point, Marvin, there's probably a good reason why they want to keep us apart.
Absolutely.
We're not supposed to come together. They're not supposed to see how three guys from different backgrounds, we can all get along. We can have a beer. We're all the same. We're all equal. There ain't nothing different. We all have the same desires, you know?
Hey,
Straight
hey,
up.
hey, and you said same desires and made me think of something. One day, I'm standing in this Thai food place waiting for my food to go, and this white guy comes in. He had called his in too, and he looked like a kind of like a engineer type dude. He had on his loafers and his khakis, a clean cut white guy, and this gorgeous Mexican lady walks out, right? And me and him both watched her go out, right? And I looked at him, he looked at me, I said, would you? He said, yeah. So we have so much more in common. This guy normally would have never spoke to this guy. He probably never would have spoke to me, but we do have something in common.
Amen.
The point
Everybody loves sushi.
but the point I'm trying to make is people need to put down their barriers.
Yeah.
People need to just put their barriers down, put their biases aside, and forget. Man, before she became vice presidential candidate, I could not stand Kamala Harris. I'm being honest, but because she's the vice presidential candidate, and now she needs me, I love her. And I love her policies. I love everything she's doing because she's my hope for the future.
That's
And
right.
I love what you say. That's a democratic perspective. You're
Well
looking to
said.
the democracy as a whole on a
Yes.
national perspective. And that is what all these people need to come together to see. But guess what? You said something earlier that caught my attention, about how we're so diverse and broke up, we can't come together. And that always happens until we have a natural disaster,
Yeah.
a war, or something else. Well, guess what's happening right now? One
All of
of
the
the greatest natural disasters, yeah, all of them. But here at home front, one of the greatest natural disasters that's ever occurred to this country is
what happened
getting
at
ready to.
Mar-a-Lago?
I'm hoping that they have no boats, no life rafts,
Um,
not even fins.
but see, Dave, I think to an extent, types of things do bring people together.
Yeah.
But but well, I think what brings the people together, like you said, it actually does happen. What you said, but we don't see it. The media don't report it. We could probably go right now to Florida or somewhere that's had a disaster, and blacks, Mexicans, whites are all working side
They
by
are.
clear the rubble. You
They
know,
are.
That's
they,
Right
right.
now, you can bet you believe it. They
but
are.
the media won't report that.
That's right.
Because and you're saying we talked about this at the beginning of the media, and that was one of my questions to you as to the bias relative to the media based upon, first of all, what do people want to see? Well, we're a bunch of, we're a bit masochistic generally speaking, humanity likes to see a good wreck. We want to see it crash. We want to see the lion capture the four little deer and eat it and
The
chew it.
baby Impala.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the little impala. We will look at that shit, right? We have gladiators, open fist fighting. I mean, football. We like violence. So it's very difficult for the media to look at a story worthwhile and say, where's the juice?
Yeah.
Where's the attention? How
well,
do we get the attention? So they look for the dirt. And here's what's interesting for me. As you lean, and I'm like you, Marvin, and I know like Craig, we're independent thinkers and we're independent voters in that
Yeah.
regard. And when I look at, and you said something beautiful a minute ago, prior to her running, you didn't really care one way. In fact, you had a dislike straight out. But now since she's running, you love her and boom, boom. And I know you're looking at these two candidates and saying, all right, let's compare them. Let's quit looking at them as Kamala and Trump. Let's just look at them as two equal candidates who are running. What's their experience? What's their background? What's their
what do they have to?
qualifications? And let's start stacking them. And here's Kamala as we start stacking them.
Yeah,
Oh my gosh,
yeah,
that on itself, just on
right.
its face,
Right.
should be enough to dissuade people from voting for Trump. But you see, they're not looking on, as you've already clearly
They're not looking at.
demonstrated, a national level,
Yeah,
a democratic level. They're not that perspective.
they're
They
not
don't
looking.
have it.
They're not looking at her merits. They're looking at
No.
all the negative stuff that he says. Anything he says, they listen to. They believe the doo-doo he says. They're
And
eating.
it's like what your friend said. I don't want to be told by some woman.
Yeah. Oh no.
Well, hold on for 1 second, Mark. It's not a case of believing what he's saying. They know I think the bigger issue is they know he's lying. They don't care he's lying. That's a big problem. I mean,
Yeah.
they know this. They know they're not eating dogs and cats in Springfield, Ohio, but they don't care. It goes back to your saying, show me the money.
Yeah.
That's a big mother effing problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it kind of tells me it doesn't matter what this guy does, what this guy says. There's a certain percentage of people in this country that alarms the shit out of me. They don't care.
They don't care.
And that's a problem.
Well, and see, they don't care, and so many people too are just totally disenfranchised. They don't even vote. They don't participate whatsoever.
Yeah.
So, like you said, they don't care, and then we end up in this kind of void we're in, right? And they're over here scrambling for independent voters and those who haven't decided. Well, you know, I don't know how to fix that. I mean, I'm someone who's I mean, I've done so much political work, and it's so interesting how people get mired in these mindsets. Like I think I told you guys about when I was in Millersville, Georgia, and we were doing some union organizing, and I was talking to this lady, and she was like, she was ready, right? I was gonna get her to sign a card, everything. And this other lady comes in and she goes, "Oh, Benita, I'm gonna tell Miss Jones. I think I told you guys this story. I'm gonna go tell Miss Jones you out here talking to the union man." So there's this mentality of, I don't know, of not bucking the system, not upsetting the master, all these different things that
Passive resistance.
yeah,
Yeah.
and not doing anything to change your lot, accepting your lot in life instead of trying to understand that you can overcome this situation. You can actually be in control, but part of you being in control is you have to be involved, and
Yeah.
people understand that being involved, like we talked before, you said you go to the school board meeting. It may start small, but people need to be involved, because once they get involved and they feel it, it's a feeling you get. And once you start seeing it and you see the energy, it's like so cool, man. It's a good feeling, but most people don't have that feeling. Most people don't want to take their own time and go out and do something like that.
Well, here's something to think about. Based on what you just said, and we've asked ourselves already through this interview here a few times, why do these people vote for Trump? You just explained it right now.
Yeah.
They get that feeling too. Let's say we got Joe Blow and his wife, Betty Ann, and they're sitting around and they're talking about their grandpappy and their daddy and their mama and aunties and everybody who grew up and how they grew up and what's going on, how they feel, and how all this country's being overran. But they keep that quiet. They keep that quiet. They only talk about that in family time when they're by themselves. And then along comes this guy who's tooting that same horn very loudly. Everybody goes, he sounds like me. So they go to the meeting. And at that meeting, they get all fired up just like that. They're around a whole bunch of similar people just like that. And they're all running towards the same cliff, not knowing that he has none of their interest in mind.
Right.
None,
That's what's so amazing to me.
none.
Oh my gosh, it's a blind following. But what are they really following? They're following their own races, their own prejudices, their own biases, their own limited understanding of the world, their own and I use politics, that term, just to describe a situation. But their politics are based on those things, this view of supremacy, of better than.
Right,
But
right.
but you spoke earlier about Mexicans and the Latino vote and people reaching a certain economic point where they start to feel like that. Black people start to feel like
Yeah,
that. Asians start to feel like that. And all of a sudden, where their history's been Democratic, boom, they become Republicans.
yeah,
Next thing you know, they're talking about the same people who they grew up with.
yeah. And they're talking about deporting some of their own family members, if possibly. You know what I mean? No, some of these people, some of their fucking cousins and shit may get rounded up and thrown out. You know what I mean? Um, it blows my mind. But okay, so every time election cycles come around, we get these. I got this book over there, two of them, one for the local initiatives and one for the statewide, about this thick. And when I was really actively involved, we had a group of us, and we'd sit around and we'd actually have study groups, and we'd read these propositions, because if you don't read them correctly, you could vote the way it says, and then you're actually voting against what you actually wanted to do.
They're written in legalese.
Yeah, so you have to read them. You got to read them a couple times. You got to read them out loud. You got to decipher them, right? So that's what I'm doing now. I'm working on that stuff. But most people don't do that. Most people don't do any kind of in-depth thinking.
Well, it's much easier. Well, is he Republican? Is he Democrat?
Right.
And that's all they care about.
Well,
And to a certain degree, I get that. I don't. I've never agreed with it as an adult, But I got to tell you, this time in history, for the first time since in the last maybe 40 years of my life or so that I've been voting, that is exactly what I am going to
Right
do.
on.
I'm going to check every blue box, every Democrat in
Yeah.
every race
Oh yeah.
across the board.
But see,
Period.
but we have Proposition 33, Proposition 35, and all those different ones.
34, right?
And politics are so intricate that a lot of folks don't understand it, so they get
No.
they don't involve themselves. All they look at is Republican, Democrat, bad, good, right? But they don't really understand that it's so complex. It's I mean, politics are very complex.
Well,
And
if you understand from the beginning, the politics is about the distribution of goods and services, money. Who gets it, who don't get it, the allocation of that across the board. That's it. And all these political representatives, whether they're at the Congress or the Senate, whatever level, statewide, regional, local, doesn't matter, all of their workings are geared towards getting that money for their own districts, etc., up the line. And unfortunately, those needs change depending upon location and locale. So Republican neighborhoods, they're not looking for things that are going to cost them money. So they want to lower the property taxes, etc., and not feed the schools. Or wait a minute, feed the schools, but only in their areas. And then meanwhile, we have these areas over here that are impoverished. The property taxes aren't as much, and the schools reflect that. So there's an imbalance. And instead of having all the money going into one general fund and distributed equally, it's not. They set up these little bullshit district boards.
Yeah. And you got one school a mile away from a school in another area that's getting half the money the other school's getting.
When I was in high school with this guy, we were chosen to go on an exchange little program for about a week or so over to Gunn High School in Palo Alto.
Mm-hmm.
Very wealthy high school. The campus looked like a park. All the classrooms were individual classrooms set in park settings where you walk trails and go to the classroom.
And remember, Dave, they were also on a college type of system at that.
All of them were.
60, what was that, 68, 69?
Yep.
They're already doing that system where they change class for every class.
Yeah. So it was kind of unique because they also exchanged students from their high school who went to ours who regretted it. Because the high school we went to looked like a prison. Straight up, it did, man. Wired out fences and stuff, big, stone columns. I mean, it looked like
windows in the classrooms and shit.
Yeah.
Those little slits. They had slits. They didn't even really have windows. They had two slits, one in the front, one in the back.
Yep, that was it. That was just like a prison, man. It was unreal. But Marvin and I, being of intellect at the time, we had a world perspective already. We decided the best thing to do was to wander off the trail a little bit and burn this really good joint I had.
Hey, even as young guys back then, you were still enlightened.
Yeah,
we were enlightened.
But
oh yes.
Double mint gum still hasn't tasted that good. I remember that stick of double mint gum. I think we had one stick and we split it in half. And I'm chewing on this gum. I could feel every single grain of sugar in that shit. I'm like, this is fantastic. I love this gum.
Best gum.
It is the best gum on the planet. Well, guys, we've been doing this now for over 40 minutes. Which is kind of, our benchmark for On the Porch. And I would suggest this might be a good jumping off spot, but I would say by all means, we need to have you back on the porch here, Marvin, real soon with everything. Go ahead.
Well, let's do it. Why don't you make your segue, your ending words as, about it being a good conversation, and we will be continuing.